Welcome world number one Scottie Scheffler to the media centre here at the Genesis Scottish Open. Scottie, you've briefly just said that it's been a warm welcome for you coming back to Scotland this week. Just give us a sense of last day or two of preparations here and what you're looking forward to this week.
Yeah, it's been going well. It's good to be back in Scotland. I love this. I love this style of golf, and so it's good to be back here playing. And it's pretty hot where I live, so I'm kind of enjoying the cooler weather for a bit.
Okay, we'll open up to questions from the floor if we want to start. Down here with Craig.
Hi Scott, you said you enjoy being back in Scotland. We obviously didn't see you last year. What's the main things that you're going to gain this week, and what's the sort of percentage between winning here and prep for next week?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a certain aspect of getting preparation for next week, but I definitely am not looking at next week. This is an important tournament for me, and this is a tournament that I want to play well in. And if I wanted to just do preparation, I would have gone and played some other golf courses for fun. I would. There's other ways to get prep than coming over and playing tournament golf, but it was important for me to get over here. Like I said, tournament golf's a little bit different than just playing for fun. So get here under the right conditions, playing a bit of wind, and get used to the time and stuff like that. But by no means am I just showing up at this tournament to prepare for next week. This is a tournament that's important to me and a tournament that I'd like to play well in.
Martin.
Scottie, there were some great pictures yesterday out on the course with your wife and your son just having fun. How important is that? 2 big weeks for you, but that's an important part as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is a fun week for us. We get to stay very close to the course, so it's nice for them to be able to walk out and hang out with me for a couple holes, and that's something that we very rarely get to do. Yesterday there was no fans out here, and so it was nice for us just to be able to relax and have Mary and Bennett come hang for a couple holes. And at tournament weeks, I don't really get a bunch of time at home, and so it's nice for them to be able to come out and hang out for a little bit.
I've spoken to you before about your relationship with Bob, which goes back to the Walker Cup. How pleased were you to see him win here, the way he did it after missing out the year before, and also being paired with him in the first 2 rounds?
Yeah, definitely excited for the week this week. We got a good pairing to start the first couple of days, and both guys have played really well in this tournament last year. And after Bob got a tough break 2 years ago, I think with Rory birdieing the last 2 holes in some pretty challenging conditions to beat him by 1, and for him to bounce back and win last year was definitely nice for me to see. And I was very happy for him. He's a guy, he works really hard, and he's one of the great guys out here, and so it was really nice to see him be able to get it done at his home tournament.
Brian.
Scottie, good to see you back again. How much do you have to adjust your game to links, because it is very different from what you regularly play in the PGA Tour? Yeah,
I don't know if adjusting my game would be the right way to describe it. I think it's more of you just hit more shots, and it's shots that I typically practice, and so it's just kind of, I think I get to use a little bit more of the tools that I have over here. I mean, you get to play a lot of different shots, high, low, and that's something that I've always enjoyed from a young age, being able to work the ball and hit different types of shots. So, like I said, it's fun for me to be able to come over here and use those tools.
What are your ideal conditions then for this week in prep for next week? Would you rather it rain, wind, because we may get some of that next week in Ireland?
I think it's pretty standard. You don't really know what's going to happen with the weather over here, and so not really something that I think about too much. Just play with whatever we get.
Doug.
Maybe when it relates, I guess, to more of the short game, I would suspect. But when's the last time you feel like you mastered a shot you didn't previously have?
That I mastered a shot?
Got better at it. You didn't win the Masters this year, I forgot.
I'm not really one of the guys that'll sit there on the range and practice one certain type of shot, even around the greens. I mean, I can't really think of an instance where I spent a lot of time hitting only one shot. I think I like to kind of figure out where my neutral is and make sure I can hit it straight, and then from there I can usually figure out how to hit it both ways and high and low. And if I'm able to hit my standard shots well, then I typically am able to hit the other shots well.
Have you run across, or does this happen often, in a shot you've never been faced with before, based on a lie? Or
yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with the lie. I mean, over here it's a different type of grass than I grew up on, and a lot of times when you hit in the rough out here, you don't really know if you're going to have a good lie or a bad lie, and sometimes you get very clean ones, and then other times you get a ball that's essentially in hay, and it's very challenging to play out of. So it's stuff that we practice throughout the week, getting ready for the tournament, and so it's not very often that we would hit or attempt to hit a shot that I haven't practiced.
And lastly, do you think luck plays or good fortune maybe plays a role in winning? And what would be your definition of that if that's the case?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you win out here, there's some sort of bounce or there's some break that you get that could go one way or another. And in these tournaments, it can be funny sometimes in links golf that with the way the bunkering is, sometimes if you barely hit it offline, it can kind of bounce in the fairway and kind of hop and go into one of those bunkers. And then some days, you're just hitting it way offline and it ends up just barely right of the bunker and you got a clean lie. And so there's a little stuff like that happens throughout a tournament week. But I mean, that's just part of it. You just got to go out there and there's no bunkers in the middle of the fairway. So just try and put the ball there and kind of, well, most of the time there's a couple. But most of the time there's no bunkers in the middle of the fairway. So just try and get the ball in play.
Ian.
Scottie, could you talk a little bit about how important or otherwise it is to you in terms of being an international golfer? The fact that this is joint sanctioned with the PGA Tour and DP World Tour, but obviously you had your win at the Olympics in Paris and now you come over here as the world number one. How important is that kind of global aspect of your career?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really played too much golf internationally. I always come over here and try to play this tournament, the Open Championship. I haven't played in Asia or Australia yet as a professional. Really with the way our schedule is on tour, the thing that's most important to me is my time at home. And so it would be wonderful to be able to play an international schedule, but right now we play most of our tournaments in the States and I come over here for these few weeks and the off season for us is typically a time where guys will go play in Asia and Australia and start the year in Dubai. But for me, what's most important is getting good time at home. That's my priority and playing the tournaments that I can.
Just behind. Sorry. Thanks, Ian.
Scottie, this is a tournament that seems to be getting bigger every year, and I wonder, putting aside next week, for the international players, is there more of an edge because Scotland, obviously the home of golf, the fans here seem to be very knowledgeable. Is that another extra edge for the international players here?
I'm confused what the question is.
Well, in terms of just being here in Scotland, that being the home of golf, is there an extra edge to winning this tournament in terms of the prestige of winning here? Yeah,
I mean, I think anytime you're able to win a tournament on the PGA Tour, the DP World Tour, I think you've done something very special. It's very challenging to win out here, and it would be very special to win at the home of golf. And like we said, it's a different style of golf that we play throughout the year, and so to be able to win a tournament on this golf course or next week, I think says a lot about a player, especially if they're coming over from the States. And like I said, you got to hit a lot of different shots and do things that we don't normally do with golf in the States, but I think it's really fun. I think it definitely brings kind of a new level of play to what we normally do.
Rex.
Scottie, what's your schedule going to look like after the Open Championship?
Yeah, go home shortly after, and then get ready. I think I'll have 2 weeks off before we start the playoffs, and then go to Memphis, to Maryland, and then to hopefully Atlanta, and finish out the year.
Okay, I'm going to go to Callum. Just here. Thanks.
Yeah, hi Scottie. Just wondering, how does your attitude towards links golf compare now, in comparison to when you first came over to Scotland a few years ago, and how much closer do you feel that you're able to, how much closer are you to getting the job done around a course like this?
Yeah, I think my attitude's always been the same. It's been a lot of fun for me to be able to come over and play these courses, and like I said, it's a different style of golf, and it's something that's really fun for me because you get to be more creative, and a lot of times you're really forced into being more creative, just especially when you get a lot of wind around these courses, and you got to play a lot more shots than I think you normally would, and a lot of that's just based on the conditions. I think if you're playing links without much wind, there's a little bit of creativity there, but you're still able to play a lot of what I would call standard shots, but then when you get 15, 20 mile wind coming off the water, you got to really change the way that you do things, especially when you're dealing with elevation changes like you deal with on this golf course.
What's your first experience of links golf?
I think it was here, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I think
What was the first Open?
St. George's was my first Open, and so it was actually my first time playing over here was. I think it was canceled. The Open was canceled in 2020. Is that right? And then in 2021 would have been my first time over here. So I played this tournament, and then we went over and played St. George's.
Any memories of first impressions?
Not really.
Houses and wind. Can you make something up just to entertain us?
Yeah. Gosh.
No pressure.
No pressure. Yeah. I think one of the things that just surprises us is the way the turf is over here. Because I mean, I play in a lot of wind growing up at home. When you grow up in Texas, you just play in wind all the time. But the wind affects the ball differently because of the turf. This turf's a little bit spinnier than the turf at home, and that was one thing that surprised me. The first time we came over was certain shots that I would play at home that would work in that much wind. I kind of had to adjust a little bit to take a little bit more spin off the ball, so take a little bit more club, take more spin off, just because of the way the turf is here. The ball actually comes off a little bit spinnier than it does off of the Bermuda grass we play at home.
Yeah. Martin.
Scottie, based on the high bar you've set in the last few years, how would you describe your season so far? You obviously got to a slow start with injury, etc. How would you sort of assess where you are at the midpoint of the calendar year?
Yeah, I mean, I feel pretty good. You know, I've had some nice starts this year. I think in golf you can always feel like you're doing a little bit better no matter how you're playing. It's just one of those sports that you always feel like you can perfect it, but you never really can get that close. So there's always stuff to be working on. There's always stuff that I can improve on. But that's I think part of just what makes golf great is it's kind of an endless pursuit.
You're halfway to a career Grand Slam. Of the two you've still to win, is there one you feel you've got a better chance than the other, US Open style or a links?
I don't think so. I think I like both styles of golf. I love kind of getting beat up at the U.S. Open. I think that's a fun battle between us and the golf course. And then coming over here, like I said, you get to do a lot of stuff that I wouldn't normally do. And like around the greens here, for example, when we're in the States, if we're practicing short game around the green, playing a practice round, I probably will use two clubs. I'll use a 60 degree and a 56. And here, I'm bringing like 5 or 6 clubs, sometimes all the way down to an 8 iron. And to me, it's a much more traditional style of golf where you can tell that the game is invented over here, because if you come out here with an older gentleman who's maybe a 10 handicap and he can't really hit the ball very high, he can still play these golf courses because you can run the ball along the ground. And no matter where you are, there's always a shot to be played. I think in the States we have to deal with a lot of grain and stuff like that around the greens, and some heavier rough. And like when you look at, let's just compare the U.S. Open and the Open Championship, two totally different types of challenges. When you miss the green at the U.S. Open, you're basically going to hit a similar type of shot each time, where you're just opening the face with a 60 and trying to play like a bunker shot to get the ball close to the hole. Extremely difficult for anybody. It's something that I would say nobody's really perfected how to do it. And then you get over here, and I miss a green, and I'm going to go over there, assess the lie. Sometimes I may get a really clean lie, sometimes I may get a thick lie. And with the thick lie, I'm probably going to have to do more of my traditional open the face on the 60, play it like a bunker shot. I get a clean lie, and I may be using an 8 iron to pitch it up the slope, or maybe a 50 degree, depending on how much pitch there is in the slope. There's over here, I'd say there's just more options, and it's just a little bit of a different test than some of the tests we see at home.
Okay, and we'll finish with Bob.
Did Ted help you much when you first came over here? Obviously he would have had a lot of experience, and I'm wondering if you even played with him over here at all at other links courses.
I've played with Ted over here once. We played Turnberry last year before the Open, but I would say I lean on Ted pretty heavily week to week, and when we're out figuring stuff on the golf course, most of the stuff that we do when we're figuring out stuff in a practice round, it's a pretty good discussion between us on what we're going to do. And a lot of times I'll tell him what I'm thinking, and he'll kind of tell me what he's thinking during the practice round, and we can just kind of have an idea of what we like to do from certain areas, and just to get prepared for the tournament. And I'd say no matter where we are, we're doing a lot of preparation together.
Have you gotten to any of the other links courses around here over the years that you've been coming, like North Berwick or Gullen or?
I've wanted to. It's just when you're here for a week of a tournament, there's just simply not much time. And because we travel over here, we get in on Monday. I was actually Justin and I were going to go try to play North Berwick on Monday this week, because I haven't played it before. But you travel through the night, body doesn't feel as it normally does from a 2 or 3 hour plane flight, and I know it's going to be tough putting my son to bed, because if it's tough for me to go to bed, it's going to be pretty tough for a 1-year-old to go to bed as well. And so didn't get the chance. And so no, I've only played this golf course around here. Teddy's played North Berwick a bunch of times, and Muirfield, but with the stage of life that I'm in, that's kind of why I talk a little bit about international golf. I get the pleasure of traveling with my family week to week, and so when I get time off at a tournament, more golf is something that I'd like to do, but it's not my priority. My family's my priority, and there'll be hopefully times later in my career when if I have some more free time at a tournament, I can go play golf. But if my wife and son are here, then I'm going to want to spend time with them instead.
Okay, Scottie, thank you for your time.
All right.